Discover the incredible journey of a runaway bride who transformed in a chicken coop for 3 days. Sarah stood at the altar, adorned in a white gown that felt more like a shackle than an adornment. The quiet murmur of family and friends faded as she faced the man who waited with a kind smile, a stable future underlined by societal expectations. A million colors danced in her mind, vibrant swirls she longed to spill onto canvas. But instead she felt the weight of the world pressing down, each breath harder than the last. This was not the life she envisioned. It was one built on everyone else's dream. Panic bubbled beneath the surface as the implicit question grew louder. How could she follow through with this charade? Before the ceremony could begin, desperation seized her. She bolted from the church, ignoring shouts of confusion trailing behind her. Outside, the crisp air didn't clear her mind. It only filled her with guilt for running away from a man who meant well. Her feet carried her to the dilapidated chicken coop that had birthed echoes of her childhood, a sanctuary of laughter now dulled by memories of others' expectations. Hiding among the broken straw and twisted wood, she felt a flicker of liberation wash over her, an unsanctioned breath from the suffocating confines of her life. Days dragged on in this makeshift hideout, each sunbeam illuminating the pastel hues of feathers that reminded her of what she yearned for. She watched the chickens with their uncomplicated joy as they scratched the ground, and it sent waves of nostalgia through her. Memories of nights spent painting glared at her from the recesses of her thoughts, distant yet achingly close. With trembling hands, Sarah retrieved old paint supplies and set to work, letting them swirl with the chaotic colors of her spirit unleashed. Each brushstroke transformed the coop. The act of painting became an exhilarating rebellion against her upbringing. Was she really willing to let go of her artistic dreams for the tidy life society had laid out? Guilt slithered into her quiet moments, tainting her vibrant thoughts with images of her mother's disappointment, overshadowing her creations. Was the path of her heart worth the chaos it would unleash among loved ones? And yet there was freedom in the chaos, a clarity that guilt could not overshadow entirely. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Her chickens continue to provide company, their pecking serving as a welcome distraction. But every time the sun dipped and shadows grew long, fear clawed at her heart. The thought of unveiling her art to a town that valued rigid conformity haunted her. She resolved that the next town art show would be the moment of truth, a risk rife with potential criticism, or worse, estrangement from her family. As anxiety settled like a lead blanket, she stood before her canvas, trembling with fear. The weight of unmet expectations loomed large, but an insistent spark urged her further. Just then, the door swung open, slamming against the coop wall, and in walked her parents. Their gazes held a mix of confusion and devastation, demanding an explanation that felt insurmountable. The tension choked the air as Sarah faced the uncertainty of her choices, her heart racing, as the path ahead remained shrouded in shadows. Sarah's breath hitched as her parents stood frozen at the coop's entrance, incredulity plastered across their faces. The once vibrant rush of defiance now muted under the weight of familial love and expectation. Every heartbeat echoed through her mind, punctuating the silence that enveloped them. She stood at the precipice of two worlds, each call beckoning with its own unyielding fervor. Her mother's wide eyes filled with unshed tears, the emotional storm evident in her wavering voice. "Sarah, we were so scared. Where have you been?" The plea carried both a sense of frantic concern and an unspoken accusation, as if her absence had told a story of rebellion they never anticipated. Sarah felt her resolve falter for a moment, struggling to articulate her truth without shattering their hopes. The harsh reality of the situation draped over her like a suffocating blanket. "I needed to think," she managed, an edge of defiance slipping into her tone. "This life, it wasn't what I wanted." Having faced every woman's worst nightmare ahead of them, she was no longer the dutiful daughter. The urgency to free herself from her parents' expectations bubbled at the surface, but it was countered by the familiar tug of affection she felt towards them. "Why would you run away?" her father interjected, disappointment lacing his words as he clenched his fists. "You had everything. Stability, love. You chose to throw it all away." His anger trembled like an earthquake beneath the surface, but mixed in was a palpable fear, the fear of losing a daughter who might never return to the fold. The chickens clucked around them, oblivious to the familial storm brewing, an odd reminder of the life she had sought solace in. As she studied the dusty atmosphere, a new perspective emerged in her mind. What would it cost her to pursue her dreams, to break free from the facade?
Everything we've built is what you wanted for me, but it's not what I want, Sarah finally said, surprising herself with newfound determination. The decision birthed in her heart fought against the instinct to acquiesce. I can't be the person you envision if it makes me miserable.
I need to express who I really am. Her words hung in the air, heavy yet liberating, as she awaited their reaction. They exchanged glances, a silent conversation only they understood. Seconds dragged by, tension settling once more. Her mother took a step forward, arms enfolding around her framed figure, pulling her close. You can be happy, sweetheart. Just don't shut us out. Yet this contrasting invitation pulled against the tender pleas of acceptance and the ever-looming specter of judgment from friends and neighbors. The art show could lay bare these secrets she was now discovering about herself. Fear and determination wrestled in her gut, an intoxicating mixture pushing her forward to explore her true passions. What if she truly leaned into this flicker of creativity? What if she used her art to confront the fear of vulnerability head-on? The darkened corners of uncertainty twisted with tantalizing potential as she stepped away from her parents, revealing the completed canvas behind her. Examining it for the first time, bold strokes and vivid colors erupted, reflecting all she felt bottled inside. This was her truth. With tentative hands, she trained her art onto the vibrant canvas of possibility. But the looming question remained. Would she have the courage to unveil not just her art, but the authentic self behind it? The discomfort of her parents' presence weighed heavily on her mind as she whispered, I want to enter it into the show. The palpable tension shifted, and Sarah braced for the repercussions of her declaration. Would they understand, or would she destroy the last thread connecting her to the life she once knew? As their reactions unfolded, a harsh light illuminated the path ahead, one where liberation clashed with love. The silence stretched, vibrating like the tense strings of a plucked guitar. Sarah could see the flicker of disbelief in her father's eyes as he processed her request. It felt electric, a challenge thrown into the air between them. Would they support her, or would her passion become yet another source of strife in an already tumultuous relationship? Her mother squeezed her tighter, the embrace warm but suffocating. You need to wait a moment, sweetheart. Maybe reconsider? The earnestness in her voice bit deeper than any critique. How easy it would be to slide back into the expectations they held so dearly, to silence her inner scream for authenticity. But the fear of contorting herself to fit their mold pushed back harder. Sarah had lived too long in the shadow of their dreams. It was time to shine with her own light. As she looked back at her art, the bright colors seemed to whisper encouragement, igniting a fire within her soul. Would she allow her true self to surface, or let those hopes extinguish again under their gaze? I can't put this aside any longer. I've spent so much time trying to make everyone else happy, she replied, releasing her breath in a shaky exhale. The tremor in her voice betrayed the weight of her decision. I need to explore this part of me, even if it frightens you. The scene unfolded like a slow-motion film, her parents exchanging flickers of uncertainty. She wondered if they could see how her desire to paint was not merely an act of rebellion, but a declaration of her true self. The chickens clucked in the solid silence, providing a strange backdrop to her burgeoning determination. Sarah, I understand. I really do. But this isn't just about you. What about the way people will view us? The shame it could bring to our family? Her father's voice tightened, desperation leaking through his already beleaguered facade. The world outside the coop loomed large with its judgment. Sarah felt the truth hang heavy, not just for her, but for the family legacy they held so closely. I want to break free from that. Sarah's words surged forth, fueled by a tidal wave of emotion. Why can't I be both, your daughter and an artist? Why can't these parts of me coexist? The internal struggle crackled between them, revealing the threads of parental love intertwined with societal expectation. Each heartbeat bore the weight of years spent dancing around each other's dreams. In that moment, Sarah realized that her art could serve as a bridge between her truth and their understanding. If she unveiled her rawest self through her work, perhaps they'd grasp that this journey was less about turning away from them and more about inviting them to see her for who she truly was. I'll be entering my piece into the show, and I want you to come. I will show you, through my art, who I am. The resolution in her voice held a power she had never harnessed before, striking a chord of defiance mixed with a plea for connection. As uncertainty settled in the air, their faces softened, yet the tension remained, a painful reminder of the fractures between them. Would their parents be willing to embrace her new path,
Or would they retreat into the comfortable darkness, leaving her to navigate this vibrant world alone? The reality of her choice loomed large. What if they refused to accept her evolution? What if the art that embodied her essence alienated the very people she loved? Clenching her fists, uncertainty ignited an ember of fear within her. But this fear served as a fuel, propelling her forward, compelling her to confront not just her parents, but also the resistance within herself. As her parents prepared to respond, the future hung in the balance, and Sarah clung to a whisper of hope. Could she transform her family's perception of success while defining her own? With each thud of her heart, a revelation hung in the air, grappling with her willingness to risk it all for the sake of her true self. The distinction between love and liberation blurred, but one truth emerged clearer than ever. The journey had only just begun. The seconds trickled by, stretching the atmosphere taut with an unspoken tension.
Sarah turned her gaze away from her parents, the weight of their expectations pressing heavy upon her chest. In the quiet of the coop, the clucking of the chickens served as a bizarre reminder of the life she'd been living, caged yet comfortable. This was her moment, a fragile balance between fear and determination. She absorbed the colors surrounding her, the vibrant splashes of paint that had become her solace. They stirred something restless inside her, mingling with the doubt threatening to cripple her resolve. What if her parents couldn't understand? What if they only saw her defiance? She steadied her breath, reminding herself that she was finally choosing to own her narrative, to step out of the shadows of their dreams. "I need to start making choices for myself," she said, almost as much to herself as to them. The conviction in her voice wavered, yet it echoed louder than ever. With every word, she dug deeper, excavating the layers of fear and uncertainty that had long buried her ambitions. "Choices?" Her father's tone was incredulous, a peculiar blend of offense and concern sparking in his eyes. "What choice involves shunning everything we've worked towards? Your security? Your future?" The words hung heavy like a dense fog, and Sarah felt each one prickle against her skin, a stark reminder of the life they envisioned for her. "Dad, I don't want security in something that suffocates me. I crave freedom to create. There's more than just the predictable path laid out before me." Her heart raced, stinging with the boldness she was beginning to feel. Each statement peeled away layers of discontent, exposing her truth beneath. "I'm not running away," she continued, catalyzed by a surge of courage. "I'm learning to stand on my own, to reclaim who I am. This journey is not an escape, it's an awakening." The depth of her emotions startled her. With every tentative step, her resolve solidified. Her mother, more closely aligned with the whispers of concern than her father, brought her hands to her chest. "But what if this hurts you? The world can be harsh toward artists. It could break you." The authenticity in her mother's fear gripped Sarah's heart, a reminder of the love mingled with the weight of expectation. A poignant silence enveloped them all, rich with the echoes of unspoken truths. Sarah felt a storm brewing inside her, and beneath the fear loomed an unwavering strength that demanded her to break free of this moment. Her mother's worry resonated, but the longing for self-fulfillment fought harder to seize the helm of her spirit. "My art is my voice," she finally said, voice steadying. "If you could see that, really see me, I believe you would understand. This isn't a betrayal of our family, it's my invitation for you to know me." Leaving behind the hope for immediate approval felt terrifying, yet necessary. She was ready to abandon the guise for authenticity instead. With resolve blooming within, she turned back towards the easel, fingers itching to dive into color and expression. It would be her form of negotiation, her exhibition of vulnerability. If her parents needed a visual understanding, then she would paint her truth, canvas by canvas. But as she prepared for that leap, a question loomed spectrally over her, a darker possibility. What if they still refused to see? Would her art, as a representation of her identity, become the very barrier that separated her from their dimension of acceptance? The fear loomed, a silent threat against her burgeoning passion. The tension shifted again, her parents caught somewhere between wanting to protect her and realizing the depths of her desire. The moment had transformed her, and now she stood at the precipice of redefinition. Was she ready to plunge into the unknown? As she glanced back at her parents, a thought struck. Could her art not just embody her, but also act as a bridge to lead them towards understanding? With that realization, her heart raced anew, filled with a flickering hope. She would not only paint her essence, she would weave a narrative that might finally bring them closer.
But first, she had to confront the reality of her next step. Would her resolve withstand the pressure of unveiling her art to those who might misunderstand? The moment for clarity arrived as she took a deep breath, summoning her courage. This journey would redefine not just her identity, but the narrative of her family. A question reverberated within. Was she truly ready to face the consequences of her liberation? Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as she faced the canvas. The paint tube sat neatly organized in a chaotic scatter, but it wasn't the colors that captivated her. It was the opportunity to spill her soul onto a blank surface, a defiant act against the confines of expectation. The air was thick, and each stroke of the brush felt like a rebellion and assertion of her worth. She sketched the outline of a scene, a young girl standing at a crossroads, vibrant colors swirling above her head like a constellation of dreams. This was not just her identity, it held the essence of the choices she longed to make and the unshakable need to distance herself from the plans her parents sculpted for her life. As she painted, her thoughts drifted to the fears that had haunted her. Would this art truly serve as a bridge, or would it widen the gap? The whispers of doubt were relentless, questioning the longevity of her passion and the viability of pursuing art as a profession. The judgments of the world echoed in her mind. Artists struggle, and she had adorning dreams of painting the extraordinary, but could she live in that truth? Frustration mounted with each stroke of her brush. She had envisioned using her art to connect with her parents, but what if her work, while personal, didn't translate to their understanding? The fear of their disappointment reared its ugly head once more.
Perhaps they would only see it as a childish whim, a flight of fancy. Would she lose them entirely if they couldn't see her for who she truly was? Taking a step back, she eyed her creation, analyzing the depth of her emotions concealed within. The brush hesitated as her internal conflict culminated, challenging her bravado. Would unveiling her truth to her parents change them? Or would it wholly redefine their relationships in ways she couldn't begin to foresee? Adopting a tactical approach, she pondered her next steps. There had to be a way to channel her narrative, perhaps crafting pieces that showcased not just her artistic ambitions, but also her journey towards self-discovery. If each brushstroke embodied her vulnerabilities, would that make her parents see her heart laid bare on canvas? The painting became a sort of diary, reflective of her struggles and hopes. Each color held a story. The blues represented solitude, while the warm hues echoed the love she felt beneath it all, a love she craved those around her to embrace. Pain lingered, but so did the promise of healing. Just as she felt alignment take form, a sudden memory flickered in her mind. A prize-winning piece she had created. It was a bold assertion of her being in a past competition. Her teacher had praised the rawness she had poured into it, suggesting such authenticity resonated far beyond canvas. That praise had ignited a spark, and perhaps that same fire could manifest again. With new determination coursing through her veins, she resolved to create pieces that did more than empower herself. They needed to evoke emotions in others, the kind of art that could foster dialogue. But before she could lose herself fully in her work, the moment shattered as her mother's voice carried through the open window from the backyard. The sound of comforting familiarity battled against the weight of their recent confrontation. Would her mother's concern merely translate into resentment for actions taken against family traditions? The thought felt like a vice grip tightening around her chest. A flicker of clarity emerged, igniting a semblance of resolution in her mind. This was not just about her transformation in art, but about redefining the connection in her family. She'd show them the real Sarah. Perhaps this was the spark they needed to truly understand each other. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the room, excitement mingled with apprehension. This was her moment, and painting her inner revolution was only the beginning. With each color, she would orchestrate her truth. But before she could dip her brush into the vivid palette before her, another unsettling question clawed at the edges of her mind. If she bared her soul, would her parents accept this new version of her? The weight of the impending revolution loomed. Was she prepared to reveal the heart of her art, and was she ready to face her parents as an artist, not just as their daughter? The vibrant color shimmered on her canvas, yet Sarah felt a heavy apprehension clinging to her. With every stroke, she was not merely painting scenes, she was sketching her future, filling it with hues of possibility or fear. The paintbrush trembled in her grasp, echoing the battle inside. Was she ready to plunge into this world where her identity as an artist could clash with her family's expectations? As she contemplated her next move, an unexpected revelation flickered in her mind. Art had always been her refuge, but had it been her voice? The question hung in the air like a challenge. If this canvas could narrate her story, would it also challenge her to articulate the emotions behind it? Could she translate her tumultuous inner life into tangible expressions that could bridge the gap between her and her parents? She took a deep breath, centering herself. Wouldn't vulnerability be the truest testament to her authenticity? Fearing rejection was valid, but embracing her craft demanded a commitment to honesty, a willingness to confront even the darkest corners of her psyche. Each color could embody a piece of her, each stroke an invitation to discover who she was beneath the weight of expectations. With renewed resolution, Sarah decided it was time to shed the shy shell of self-doubt she had worn for too long. Grit tinged her strokes, lined with intent and clarity, illustrating the girl at the crossroads, every option blooming like flowers ready to be plucked, while the roots clung tightly to her past. As she worked, memories of her childhood surfaced, the times her father smiled at her sketches, the way her mother had encouraged her to pursue science over art, thinking it a more stable path. But those heartwarming moments twisted into pangs of guilt. What would they think now? Would the very essence of her being be met with warmth or punishment? To put a voice to her thoughts, she decided to write alongside her painting. Words flowed as freely as the colors, dashing across the canvas like her dreams had leaped from her heart. Her piece transformed into a multimedia exploration of self, each visual echoing a hidden truth. The girl at the crossroads not only grappled with choices, but also held a story that begged to be shared. This combined journey deepened her commitment to her craft. Rather than hiding it from her family, she began to strategize ways to bring them into her world. Should she invite them to her studio to see her work in progress? Or perhaps they could sit with her as she unveiled her piece, witnessing firsthand the transformation it represented. Each idea felt like an inch closer to facing the truth, but her stomach churned with uncertainty at the thought of exposing so much. Time slipped away, and soon the room was cloaked in the soft glow of evening light, illuminating her canvas and her resolution. But as she completed her work, a wave of doubt washed over her anew.
Would this artistic portrayal evoke the recognition she yearned for, or would it fracture the very bond she wished to solidify? Sarah looked around her cluttered space, filled with supplies and remnants of her chaotic journey. In that moment, she recognized that rejecting her truth would mean sacrificing the very art that breathed life into her being. Her heart raced with anticipation, each pulse an invitation to dive deeper into the unknown. She stepped back, surveying her creation, as an omnipresent question nibbled at her consciousness. Would unveiling her heart through art be the key to unlocking understanding within her family? With that thought hanging heavy in the air, she brushed her fingers against the canvas one last time, feeling the reality of what she was about to embrace. The time had come to prepare for that first conversation with her parents. Would they welcome her art or resist her identity? The shadow of uncertainty loomed large, and Sarah knew that the true test awaited just beyond her threshold. What revelations lay in store for her when she opened the line of dialogue with her family? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow through the studio windows, Sarah felt as if her heartbeat synchronized with the clock ticking on the wall. Each tick echoed her mounting anxiety about approaching her parents. The vibrant colors on her canvas blended seamlessly with the dark thoughts swirling in her mind. Was she truly prepared to reveal the authenticity of her art, and by extension her soul? Each shade represented layers of her identity, and as she honed in on the details of her painting, she recalled the snippets of conversations with her parents that had lingered in her memory. Her father's voice, tinged with support and pride, contrasted sharply with her mother's cautious recommendations. "Art is a hobby, Sarah. You need to think practically," her mother had said more often than not. It was as if her mother understood the driving forces behind Sarah's art, but couldn't wholly embrace them. But now, that struggle for acceptance sparked a flicker of defiance within her. She felt empowered to confront family ideals, leading her to contemplate how she could meld her artistic journey with familial expectations. If her canvas could speak, what truths would it voice? Each stroke of paint could tell her story and extend a tether of understanding to those she loved most. Contemplating the impending conversation, Sarah began formulating a plan that would help illuminate her intentions. It wasn't merely about showcasing her art.
It was about sharing her experiences, her demons, and ultimately revealing the treasures that lay hidden in her creative process. She gathered scraps of paper and began writing down her thoughts about how she could present her artistry to her parents. It was both her offering and her challenge. This art represented her willingness to be vulnerable, to stand tall amid their judgments.
The next day, she picked up the phone and made the call. Though her voice wobbled, she invited them to her studio. "I want to show you something important, something that means a lot to me," she uttered, directing her panic into determination. As days passed, she became increasingly anxious about the unveiling. What if her art failed to resonate with them? What if they reacted with disappointment instead of understanding? These thoughts invaded her peace, yet she managed to keep pushing through. She could not let fear of rejection dictate her identity any longer. Art required risk, and this was the greatest risk she had ever taken. On the day of the meeting, she meticulously arranged her studio space, crafting it like an intimate gallery. The bold swaths of color on the canvas beckoned her parents to explore deeper meanings, and as she sat, heart racing, she finally felt the gravity of her choices settle heavily on her shoulders. They arrived, a mixture of excitement and trepidation radiating from her as she welcomed them into her world. Her mother glanced around the room, taking in the scattered brushes and vibrant canvases, while her father pulled in a deep breath. His eyes landed directly on the focal painting. "Sarah," her mother started, yet the words stumbled. Sarah sensed that her mother's struggle mirrored her own. Would this moment bridge their worlds, or would it tighten the divide? Taking a deep breath, Sarah readied herself to dive into the narrative behind her creation, each brushstroke a memory, each color an emotion. One conversation could unravel the years of compartmentalization, and she resolved to make it count. With the paint still fresh on her canvas, a wave of anticipation coursed through her veins. This was it, her moment of truth. Would her family recognize the deep intricacies embedded in her art and acknowledge the artist she had become? As she prepared to speak, Sarah could feel the tension in the air shift. This might be the decisive moment that would either fracture their relationship or bind them together in a newfound understanding. The canvas stood poised, ready to divulge the complexities of her heart, waiting for her first words. What would emerge from this dialogue, both frightening and exhilarating, linger in the space like a held breath, waiting for release? Sarah felt the weight of every breath as she prepared to unveil her art to her parents. The air was thick with tension, and she couldn't help but wonder if the colors on her canvas would speak louder than her anxious heart. "This is more than paint," she thought. "It's my truth, my vulnerability." As her mother finally managed to speak, the hesitant tone in her voice cut sharply through the silence. I see you've been busy," she said, attempting to bridge the gap between apprehension and curiosity. Sarah's father followed her gaze, nodding appreciatively, yet the slight frown on his brow indicated uncertainty.
"Thank you for coming," Sarah began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've poured myself into this work. Each piece tells a story of who I am and what I've been through." She motioned toward the larger painting, the centerpiece of the unveiling, the one she had labored over in countless sleepless nights. Her heart raced as she spoke. "This one is about my struggle with doubt. The colors represent the chaos I felt, especially when I thought about pursuing art seriously. You've both shaped my experience in ways I sometimes struggled to understand." Her eyes flicked from her mother's cautious expression to her father's more supportive, albeit worried gaze. "Sarah, it's beautiful," her father finally affirmed. "But we worry about you making this a career. You have so much potential, and there are stable paths for you to explore." "Stable paths," Sarah interrupted, the fire igniting within her. "But what if they suffocate my creativity? What if I conform to a life that isn't my own?" The words spilled forth, raw and unfiltered. She felt a cathartic release. "This is my life. This is who I am." The entry of defensiveness shocked her, but it was a reflection of her need for affirmation. Her mother's brow tightened, and Sarah sensed the internal tug-of-war playing out in her family, as if they were grappling with the implications of her choice. "What if no one accepts your paintings?" her mother countered, desperation lacing her voice. "What if you fail?" "Failure isn't the end for me anymore," Sarah replied,
forcing calmness into her tone. "It's a part of growth. My art represents my failures, my fears, but also my resilience." She stepped closer to the canvas, letting the vibrant colors pull her in, each hue whispering tales of struggle, triumph, and defiance. Strikingly, Sarah realized her art was also a mirror reflecting their own fears of the unknown. As she watched her parents wrestle with their thoughts, she felt a twinge of empathy for their protective instincts. Their own expectations felt as much a burden as her aspirations. "While I love you both," she stated softly, "I cannot live my life in the confines of tradition and practicality. I need you to see that my art is more than a hobby. It's my lifeblood." A significant pause enveloped them, punctuated only by the soft sounds of the brushes and paints still scattered about the studio. Sarah's heart raced. She recognized the potential turning point of their conversation. Did this moment hold the weight to shift the family dynamic, or would it deepen the rift between them? "I want to believe you," her mother finally said, the vulnerability crumbling through the shell of her reservation. "But it's hard." Sarah seized this opportunity, her determination solidifying. "Then you need to explore it with me. Let me share my journey. I want to invite you into my world, not just as my parents, but as my allies."
The room fell silent again, charged with an energy that felt like a promise hanging in the air, a shared willingness to bridge their differences. Sarah could feel the cracks of misunderstanding beginning to mend, yet a familiar wave of apprehension washed over her. What would it take for them to fully embrace her choices? A fear tugged at her mind. That bottomless pit of doubt awaited, teasing a potential return to judgment and expectations. Before her parents could respond, she ventured, "If you're willing to take part in my art, let's start with a first step. I want to create something together, a piece that embodies our shared experiences." The proposition lingered, both daunting and exhilarating. Acceptance danced on the edge of that vulnerability. But what if they rejected the idea? With her heart in her throat, Sarah prepared herself for whatever answers awaited, realizing she was poised at the cusp of a newfound relationship, not only with her art, but with the very people who had shaped her existence. Would they dare cross the threshold into her world, or would they remain steadfast in their reservations? In that moment, the next chapter of their relationship hovered like a brushstroke in midair, ready to transform the canvas of their family dynamics forever. The silence hung thick, causing Sarah to squirm slightly, acutely aware of the weight of her proposal. Her parents exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of disbelief and contemplation. She held her breath, the moment stretching out as she fought against the urge to fill the silence with chatter to alleviate her own anxiety. "Work on something together?" her father finally asked, his voice breaking the tension with a note of hesitance. "You mean actually create art together?" "Yes, exactly," Sarah exclaimed, her enthusiasm bubbling up despite the lingering uncertainty. "I want to involve you both in the process. Let's combine our perspectives. It would make the piece so much richer. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about all of us finding a common ground." Her mother looked down, twisting her fingers together, an action Sarah recognized as a sign of her distress. The years of comfort in their predictable routines flashed in Sarah's mind as she desperately sought a way to bridge the gap between them. She thought of the vibrant hues on her canvas, how they blended and clashed to create significance, yearning for her family to experience that chaos together. "What kind of art would we create?" her mother asked, cautiously lifting her gaze back to Sarah, a flicker of hope threading through her skepticism. "Something reflective of our journey as a family, perhaps a piece that deals with doubt and resilience. We can each contribute our thoughts and emotions. Each brushstroke could serve as a testament to our shared experiences," Sarah proposed, her heart racing at the very idea of inviting her parents into the depths of her creative world.
"I can't paint," her father countered bluntly, his voice wavering between dismissal and concern. "Of course you can. It's not about technical skill, it's about expressing what's inside you," she encouraged, her voice gaining strength. "It's a chance to connect, to understand one another. You don't have to be masters to paint something meaningful." With every assertion, Sarah felt an ember of hope kindling within her. Yet she could sense their reservations still lurking, and she anticipated their fears taking form. "I just worry that this is some kind of diversion," her mother admitted hesitantly, "that it could lead to more disappointment. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but isn't it worth exploring?" Sarah shot back with a newfound confidence. "This moment doesn't have to come with expectations. We can simply create together. And for those of us who fear flying, sometimes we need a push to test those wings." An almost imperceptible nod from her mother tossed a light into the dim ambiance. It was as if Sarah's commitment was reverberating sound waves, shaking loose the debris of their doubts.
But as her father opened his mouth to respond, he paused, a conflicted look crossing his face. After a moment that felt like eternity, he spoke. "Sarah, if we do this, we'll do it right. No half-hearted attempts. But it will take time. This isn't just a 2-hour project. Are you ready for that commitment?" "I am," Sarah replied, honesty fueling her voice. "This is about more than just creating art. It's about bridging our understanding, about battling the feasts of fear we've all been dealing with. I'm all in." Just as they started to engage in a substantive discussion of colors and emotions, a sudden thought popped into Sarah's mind, bringing with it both excitement and unease. The notion of vulnerability had deepened her resolve. But what if they unearthed something profound, a truth buried so deep it could change everything? As she shared her vision for the piece, Sarah felt trepidation tempered by exhilaration. Was she truly ready for the truths that might come forward, truths she hadn't discovered fully herself? Would they unearth hidden treasures of emotion or distress? While her parents began to contemplate their engagement in the endeavor, doubts flickered at the edges of Sarah's mind. Could they venture beyond their fears and harness this unity to create something genuinely transformative? What if by engaging in this shared journey, we find ourselves changed? She blurted, feeling the weight of the mere possibility settle around them. As she glanced at her parents, she knew they were standing on the cusp of defining a new narrative together, a narrative of discovery, conflict, and perhaps redemption. Would they be willing to navigate through these uncharted waters of creativity, or would she be left to stride forward alone, grappling with a fearsome independence? Her heart pounded in rhythm with her thoughts, the feel of the paintbrush in her hand becoming an extension of her hope, a hope that could either break or mend the fabric of their family bonds. The next brushstroke of their evolving story depended on the answer lingering in the air, poised to transform the canvas of their lives forever. As Sarah stood in her studio, her heart raced with anticipation. The sunset flooded the space with warmth, casting shadows across the vibrant canvases that lay in disarray, reflecting her internal chaos. The proposal to create art together hung in the air like a lifeline, the promise of change and connection beckoning her forward. Her parents regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. She had taken a leap into the unknown, and now they stood at the edge, contemplating whether to join her in this artistic venture. Sarah felt exposed yet invigorated. This moment marked the culmination of her journey towards self-acceptance and authenticity. "I want to build something together that reflects who we are as a family," she reiterated, hopeful that her passion might ignite a spark in them. "Art doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty, emotion. I believe this could bring us closer." Watching the uncertainty dance across her parents' faces, Sarah understood their fears all too well. They had spent years wrapping themselves in the safety of tradition, their aspirations intertwined with societal expectations. But the escalating fire of her own desires blurred the lines of fear, pulling her toward the light of possibility. "I know change is hard," Sarah said, her voice steady, "but growth often feels like a leap off a cliff. Together we can catch each other if we fall." Her mother's brow furrowed, caught between the safety of predictability and the allure of the unknown. "What if we're just not good enough?" she whispered, vulnerability cracking the surface of her concern. "It'll never be about good enough," Sarah countered, a surge of determination fueling her. "It'll be about using the canvas to share our truths, our experiences. This isn't just my journey, it's ours. We can create a narrative that showcases our imperfections and triumphs." The realization that this endeavor was a new avenue for their shared love made Sarah's heart swell. She sensed the thaw in their hesitation. They were on the brink of seeing the art as a binding force instead of a barrier. "Let's start small," her father finally said, the tension visibly easing in his shoulders. "Explain to us your vision. How do we engage without feeling swallowed by the pressure?" A flicker of hope ignited in Sarah. This was a realization of shared curiosity. "We'll choose colors based on our emotions, share stories behind them, and each of us will paint a section of the canvas with those colors. It'll be a tapestry of our collective experiences." As Sarah outlined her plan, she saw her mother nodding slowly, and her father shifting from skepticism to intrigue. "Let's do it," he said finally. "Let's see where this takes us." With every word exchanged and every shared look, Sarah felt a gloss of realization pool over her spirit. Their fears were beginning to unravel. They were moving toward a shared vision, a craving for connection that eclipsed the confines of past expectations. That weekend arrived, punctuated with the excitement of a distant family reunion. Laughter and uncertainty converged as they gathered in her studio. They had cleared the space, prepared canvases, and lined up swatches of paint. The smell of creativity filled the air. Standing together in the bright light, Sarah felt the awakening of a new kind of love blooming between them. Her parents approached the easels with hesitance, but they exchanged tentative glances. This unity cradled within each brushstroke held promise.
As they began to paint, their pencils whispered stories no words could articulate. Every layer of color unearthed emotions rarely shared: the fear of failure, the longing for connection, the excitement of possibilities unveiled. Laughter erupted as they playfully flicked paint at each other, a reminder of their shared histories filled with warmth and occasional bickering. This was not merely an artistic endeavor. It was a reclamation of their individual and collective identities, beautifully tangled yet distinct, each color acting almost like a character of their journey. Over the next weeks, they continued their sessions, creating a masterpiece assembled piece by piece, revealing bits of understanding they once shrouded beneath societal constraints. Each brushstroke echoed in the silent conversations that grew comfortable between them. The ties of their bond began to mend, to strengthen, through the medium they had initially feared. As the completion of their collaborative piece loomed, Sarah felt buoyed by newfound confidence. Things had changed irreversibly. Her parents were embracing her artistry, one stroke at a time. Their family discussions grew deeper, exploring not only art but also dreams and desires they had once buried under expectation. Finally, the day arrived for the grand unveiling at the local gallery. Sarah held her breath as her parents proudly stood by her side in front of the canvas they had created together. A vibrant kaleidoscope displayed the journey of their evolution, a testament to their collective growth woven through laughter, vulnerability, and love. As others admired the work, her parents turned to her, pride radiating from their expressions. "We never really understood until now," her father said, emotion thick in his voice. "And your journey is our journey too," her mother added, the warmth consuming them like a soft embrace.
With tears of joy brimming in her eyes, Sarah realized that she had conquered the greatest fear of her life, not just through her art, but through the connection it fostered, breathing new life into her family's dynamics. She had emerged as an artist, not just under her own name, but as a vital thread in the fabric of her family. More importantly, she had proven to herself that authenticity and vulnerability could instigate not only personal growth, but could also rekindle love and understanding. This transformative experience had propelled her forward, solidifying her newfound identity as an artist, empowered by her canvas and the people she loved most. She had finally embraced the thrilling and uncertain journey ahead, stepping confidently into the art world with her own bright colors painted across the horizon. As she surveyed the faces of her family, she knew this was her moment of true achievement. Sarah smiled wide. It had never been just about art. It had always been about love, authenticity, and evolution. Now was her time to shine. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.